question each, and then followed by subsequent round, and we will keep sufficient time for the question and answer session. And if after the first round, if any of the panelists wants to add of their own views in the questions asked earlier, they are also welcome to do that. So with this slight brief about the program for next 1 hour, I will start with Mr. Hickey with the first question. So, Mr. Hickey, what are the most important characteristics of the 5G network equipment security? Over to you, Mr. Hickey.
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
yes.
Good morning, thank you. Okay, well, I suppose, first of all, with I guess with 5, we have several new use cases. If you recall, with 4G systems and LTE, it was originally specified with one major use case in mind, and that was mobile internet access. I guess with 5G, we've a wide variety of use cases to support, for augmented reality, smart transport, utilities, and we're also seeing networks now that are dedicated to massive IoT systems or supporting massive Internet of Things and a large number of devices. So with these, you get many different use cases. Once it's a one-size-fits-all approach to security is no longer viable. And we need to be able to adapt and optimize our security setup for these different use cases based on I suppose, a flexible set of security measures and procedures. And so we have a growing need for flexibility in this network. There will be mission critical services where safety and even human lives may depend on the availability and integrity of the service. And with the rise of such services, there is a growing need for, I suppose, a large dependency on the network and the services built on that network as well. So on the other hand, then 5G networks are adopting to facilitate this, and probably a driver for this for 5G networks. We have to adopt as vendors and obviously as operators as well to using new network paradigms. Network function virtualization, software defined networking will make these networks much more dynamic. But we can't really assume that this comes without new possibilities for attacks, and as such that there's a wider attack surface. So in addition to all of these new threats to deal with, 5G 5G security has to deal with that. So we have we expect to see or we have already seen it, a changed ecosystem for 5G networks, for 5G systems, and you also have rather than a single provider, single vendor approach, we're going to see many a completely different infrastructure provided by many different multi stakeholders as such. So in this situation, it's clear that for 5G networks, security has to be airtight. And not only a set of protection measures added on top of features, you can't just add them on at the end, but security has to be built in from the very start. So security by design for your network, for your products, that has to be taken into account. We need much more highly flexible security mechanisms. A high degree of automation will come into this, for example, in the area of management and orchestration of these network virtual functions. In the area of reactive security tools, for example, for tools that will monitor the network and try to detect and automatically fend off any types of attacks. So with 5G, you have a whole series of new specific security functions that even have been defined by 3GPP. So at a very high level, that's what we're going to see with, that's the characteristics, that are the changes we're going to see with 5G security. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. A very important point you have raised is human security, because of the new vertical, especially with medical healthcare also coming in and using 5G. So that was a very important point. So moving on to Mr. Walia from Ericsson. Mr. Walia, what is the key difference between 4G security specification and 5G security specification? And also, if you could throw some light on how does the security posture improve when we move from 5G, from 4G to 4G, 5G, because there is a non-standalone mode to a standalone mode also. Oh, sorry, within the 5G. So over to you, Walia.
Thank you, sir. So first of all, a warm welcome, and I would say good morning to all my esteemed panelists and also the audience. So I think to that point, I mean, when we see 5G security, and as John was saying, that when it comes to 5G security, I think 3GPP considered that we have to ensure that security is by design built into the 5G systems, and that is where they actually looked into a few of the, I would say, the gaps or vulnerabilities that existed in 4G networks, and that were being addressed then in 5G. And some of the key, if I mention, are around your interconnect security in terms of roaming. I mean, that has been improved because there were some issues around SS7 and diameter-based interconnect signaling that would happen. Then there were also issues around privacy in terms of false base station detection. So those were, I would say, some of the key vulnerabilities that existed in 4G. Now, when we move to 5G, and again, I think it's important to highlight that in 5G, obviously, you could have two modes. You could have a non-standalone and standalone. What a non-standalone mode means that you are still using the 4G core, but you have 5G new radio in the access. Whereas with 5G standalone, which means end-to-end, it is 5G system, which means that you have 5G core and then you have also 5G radio. In order to kind of enjoy the benefits of the new additions that have been done in 5G networks, you would have to deploy 5G standalone, because 5G non-standalone, the level of security is equivalent to what is there in 4G from a standardization perspective. So when you move to 5G SA, that is where you could enjoy a lot of these additions that have been done from a 5G security perspective in 3GPP when we talk about release 15 and release 16, and then obviously something ongoing in R17 also. So if we look into these improvements, I would try to make it a little bit easy. Like, let's take it from three dimensions. One is from the core, the air interface related to the radio, and then the transport. So in the core, we have the service-based architecture, which brings important security enhancements when the standalone version is taken into use. Because when we talk about NSA, there is no 5G core. And SBA is the new thing that has been introduced into 5G core as part of standalone. And what SBA provides is things like TLS, which ensures end-to-end secure between network functions, wherein you can actually do the authentication, authorization before two entities start to communicate with each other. It is more like a zero trust kind of a reference wherein you would like to verify who is communicating with you before you start to really transmit the information. The other thing is you have from an interconnect security perspective, there have been again enhancement with the new mechanism again using TLS and JOS, which is the JavaScript object signing and verification, which again provides end-to-end security between network operators. And that is where the 3GPP has introduced a new element, what they call as security edge proxy function, which would sit at the edge of the operator network and then would work as a proxy connecting into the other interconnecting partner network. Further, when we talk from an air interface perspective, here we have 3GPP has introduced in 5G support for encrypted IMSI or SUPI, as we call in 5G. And also we have a user plane integrity protection that has been introduced over the air for air interface for the user traffic or the user plane traffic. What it does is that enhances the end user security and privacy, and kind of takes care of, to an extent, the kind of attacks that we used to see from false base station kind of attacks are really minimized with introduction of these capabilities in the I would say in the over-the-air interface in the radio network. Finally, from a transport perspective, it's worth mentioning that 3GPP has defined a new, or I mean, they have not defined the protocol, but they have allowed use of DTLS, which is for the control plane traffic that is going between the RAN and the core. In case again, it's up to the operator. I mean, obviously, if they want to use that, if they feel the transport is insecure, and this use of DTLS actually makes the implementation of security simpler and easier compared to the earlier existing option, which still is an option in 5G also, which is use of IPsec. But then with IPsec, you would need to deploy additional security gear in the network. So I would say that we have enhancements that have been done in each of these areas. And then when we talk from what John was saying, that there are different use cases that have been basically enabled by 5G, and that is where with R16 and R17 we are seeing additional security measures enhancements that are being brought in for enabling these different use cases. Maybe it is from ultra low latency reliable communication or verticals. So these are, I would say, the enhancements that we see, and then we can say today that 5G is the most secure G ever from a mobility perspective, mobile network perspective.
Thank you, Jagdeep, for giving a overall perspective. So the key points which you made is that there's the introduction of a new element called security edge protection proxy. That is one. You've also mentioned that there will be an encrypted SUPI. SUPI is the equivalent of IMSI in 5G. Then also you have mentioned about the new feature of user plane integrity. Of course, you have recommended that all these features we should go in for a standalone mode rather than non-standalone mode. So thank you, Jagdeep. Now moving on to Mr. Anurag Gupta from CDOT. Anurag, I would like to ask you about security has two dimensions. One is cyber security. One is also what we know as lawful interception. So what I would ask you is that you have implemented CMS that is working in the network. So how do you feel that CMS would have to be undergone? I mean, will undergo a change when the 5G networks slowly come. So over to you, Anurag.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Telecom, sir. Member Technology, sir. Member Services, sir. DG Telecom, sir. DG NTI Prit, sir. Moderator, Mr. Mittal, Professor Ramamurthy, fellow panelists and participants. Good morning. Related to this question, the lawful interception basically takes the data from the TSPs through the LIS and basically provides it in a suitable format to the law enforcement agencies via the LEMF to analyze and extract intelligence, say from listening to a phone call or reconstructing an MMS or a web page. So two ways of taking data out of the network are either by directly interfacing with the TSP core networks to provision the target lists and collect data, or through passive probes which monitor the transport links for relevant LI information. So as Mr. Mittal has asked, some of the challenges for this are, one, in the 5G networks, it caters to the ultra low latency, which requires packet processing at the edge. And now the LI is required both at the network edge and at the core. Another challenge is related to the high throughput. So as we know that the TCP transport in GPRS and Edge has increased from few kilobits to tens of gigabits in 5G. Earlier, when the connection was established with a network element, a single TCP socket was enough as traffic never exceeded 1 gig for a target. With 5G, this could increase to several gigs. So one option is to change the TCP socket to UDP, which is prone to losses with no guarantee that the data will be transferred, or have a multi-socket TCP connection to deliver the multiple gigs to LIS and then to LEMF. But the challenge to mirror the data to the lawful enforcement agencies is that their systems evolve at a much slower pace compared to the cutting edge TSP networks. Then in 5G, there are new network elements, new interfaces, new identifiers like IMEI to PEI, SUPI and SUKI, and the associated challenges. So one approach by the agencies could be to use IMSI grabbers or cell site simulators to find people or rogue devices. But in 5G, the identity of the subscribers, that is the SUPI, is never transferred to the 5GC. So the cell site simulator would only see particular SUKI getting transferred for a limited period, which then never repeats. So it would become nearly impossible to capture network data and identify the targets. So this requires a correlation of SUKI to SUPI. Then changes in the IRI and the call content, the content of communication PDU structures in the standards would require the LI and the LEMF systems to be upgraded. New interface between the mediation functions and the network element to establish a trust with the network element, because the 5G networks are inherently virtualized, and to set up an encrypted bearer before provisioning the target information on the network element. There is also a new interface for LI defined for the edge. Another aspect is with the large number of sensors and IoT devices, you would see a transition from devices connected to hubs like Wi-Fi home routers to low-powered 5G IoT connections. Networks may get exposed to massive attacks by such devices if they become infected by malware and are abused by an attacker as a botnet for carrying out attacks such as DDoS attacks. Another thing is that some of the 5G network carriers are completely cloud native. But since the regulatory agencies won't be happy about their data to be cloud hosted, the TSPs could do a hybrid approach wherein, apart from doing their processing in the cloud, dedicated servers could be deployed with appropriate security measures to hold the sensitive LI information and target lists. So I think this, in my view, are some of the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Anurag. You have uh, highlighted the challenges for the LI with respect to low latency, high throughput, and encrypted identifiers. So thank you, Anurag. Now I will, the question is for Professor Ramurthy, please. Sir, Secretary Sir mentioned about IIT testbed, which has been established. So one is that we would like to hear about the capabilities of that testbed, and also given that the 5G core is completely virtualized and distributed with edge computing there, what steps are to be taken for ensuring security against denial of service attacks, data theft, etc.? Over to you, Professor.
Sir, you're on mute, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I audible now?
No, sir, you are audible. I think Mr. Ramamurthy is on mute, actually.
No, am I audible now?
Yeah, now you're audible.
Is my slide visible?
No.
No.
No. Okay. So let me just, I think, I don't know, I tried to share. Let me give me 2 more seconds. Let me see if I can do it. I need permission as presenter, is it? I'm not sure. Or I had sent the slides to Mr. Yashwant. I don't know if he can share it. Then I can, only 3 slides. It will help us focus if he can share it.
Mr. Yashwant, could you share the slides sent by Professor Bhaskar Ramu?
So just sharing it.
Thank you. Thank you. There are only 3 slides. I'll ask you to move them whenever I need. Thank you very much.
Sir, have you shared in the group, sir?
No, I just sent it to Mr. Yashwant. I thought I will share it now on the screen, but it's not working.
Yashwant, we will do it from here. I'll manage from here.
Yes, sir.
Sir, while he's sharing the slides, let me begin by.
Bhala sir, just I have got the slides, so just I am sharing. If
Yeah, please do that. While you do that, let me start by wishing everybody good morning and thanking the organizers for inviting me. I'll try to sort of, thank you. I'll try to first put the question about the test bed aside. The test bed is we have a complete network implemented. The radio head, the RAN, starting from the radio head ends to the distribution unit, to and then the core. We also have our own reference UEs, but we have all the test equipment that you need also, UE emulator, GNB emulator, everything. And the idea is anybody who has any subsystem that they have developed, right from an application, 5G application, to an IoT device or any subsystem, including subsystems that connect to the core, small cells, whatever they have. In fact, we're even helping some startups do an involved testing where some of their implementations that go into a radio head end actually get tested. It's much harder to do that, but we are doing that also. So the idea is any entity in the country, starting from students, researchers to startups to companies who want to test anything from applications right into systems that plug into the network, they can test it and validate it in the test bed. We already have a bunch of startups, companies, including large companies who have specific products who want to test, test their product before they go to a field test. So that it is now running and available. In fact, we are awaiting a formal inauguration that is scheduled any time now. With regard to, and the same test bed, we are proposing to also get it set up for specifically for security testing. So, as a captive network, so that any security testing, stress testing, etc., can be done for products, for handsets, for example, or for RAN elements in that captive network. Now, let me start, share a few thoughts with everybody on because this seminar is on network, this panel is on network equipment security. I'm focusing on that. So till now, as some of the predecessors mentioned in 3G and 4G, first of all, the users, individual human users were connected to the network, and they were either doing voice calls or they were accessing the internet while mobile, and this was primarily the main application. And the connect to the internet from the user through the mobile network was through one or a small number of core network elements. A few choke points where effective security controls can be implemented. From the networks, from the internet side, you could implement your firewalls and all your security policies at these choke points. And from the user side, since individual users are the only risk elements there, it's, I think basic authentication, making sure the user is a authorized user through the SIM and identity, etc., is pretty much what you need. You don't need too much more. When you come to 5G, the core is highly virtualized and distributed, as already has been discussed. And it also includes edge computing. you have core at the edge also. This makes the core network much more vulnerable. This is also mentioned by the first speaker today. The attack surface is much bigger. Example, denial of service attack can now occur at the interface of the operator network, cloud, and the backhaul network, for example. Or between the access network and the edge cloud. If you have cloud, edge computing servers. Anywhere, any one of these places, there could be a denial of service attack. And therefore, the stress test, the testing of such a network has to be very, very thorough to ensure that all such points of vulnerability are taken care of. Similarly, in 5G, once you go to standalone mode, one of the attractive features is the possibility of providing network slices. You can have network slice for the police force, for example, and so on. There could be slice theft. And this could occur at either of the two interfaces above, either at the edge cloud interface or at the interface between the network cloud and the operator network and the backhaul network. So again, this has to be tested for the slice. No, any organization that goes to the extent of having a slice will obviously want the security to be completely watertight. So this will require a fair amount of testing and assurance. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. That, as has already been mentioned, 5G now supports mega scale IoT devices. Millions of them, for example. You could have, for example, cameras, surveillance cameras in a city for traffic and law enforcement of the roads. All these cameras that the police put up could be connected, and they could be actually handled by edge computing servers which are localized, but with the ability to switch instantaneously to a central control room and so on. And if you have this kind of a network where millions of user devices are actually belonging to under the control of one organization, this is very different from millions of human users. They are not coordinated. But here, these devices could all actually be procured from a very limited number of vendors, and they could all be machine controlled. And you could have, for example, flash traffic flows. Now, flash traffic is different from denial of service attack. This is legitimate traffic. Okay, that means just that it overwhelms the network, and so you have to be able to protect against these kinds of potential attacks also. The last point is, since operators will implement security policies differently in such a complex environment, the conflicts among these policies that are different differently implemented by two operators could introduce a vulnerability at the interconnect points. This was also mentioned by a speaker ahead of me, and I think 5G standard has provided some, as was mentioned, some capabilities to handle these things. The only point I'm making is from the point of view of network licensor, I think, and the operators, there has to be some methodology by which the operator, the telecom service provider, indicates all the steps taken to ensure security, to ensure that vulnerability at these various points has been addressed, and then there should be a way to stress test their solution and try to do ethical hacking to see whether this is indeed as secure as is believed. Next slide, last slide, please. I'd like the last slide, please.
So just takes time, it's coming.
Yeah. So this is really what I'm coming to the testing part. So apart from the testing for the usual standard supported security features that prevent unauthorized network access, etc., to ensure unauthorized user devices or RAN elements cannot access the network, because potentially you could even have a rogue base station. But I think the standards are all pretty well designed to protect against all these things. But we need additional security testing in the case of 5G for identification and prevention of denial of service attacks at all the interfaces between the operator cloud and backhaul or access network. As I said, there are multiple such vulnerable points, and we have to first have I think there has to be a process by which the telecom service provider details all the steps taken, what are the various measures taken, and then there has to be some kind of a stress testing to just to see that things actually can withstand an attack. Then again, if when we reach the point where SA networks are deployed and slices are being provided, slice theft or intrusions into slices, this is going to be very important, because anybody who's going to take a slice is going to be very concerned about intrusion and theft. I also said that we have to protect against identification and prevention of flash traffic from IoT devices, because coordinated action from millions of devices is now potential threat. That is very unlikely in the case of 4G handsets, for example. And I would say resilience to vulnerabilities arising out of some mismatch in the security policies of different TSPs at the interconnect points. So one TSP does something one way, another TSP does something another way, and that creates a vulnerability for an attack through the interconnect point. Each network might itself be safe, but somehow the combination gives a vulnerability. These are things that one has to check, test out, and make sure that everything is protected. So I would say DOT, the Center for Security has to really develop a whole protocol for getting information from the TSPs on what they have, what are all the various steps they are taking, and then also to introduce some kind of testing. This testing could be done on a captive network if it interferes with operation, but it could also be done on the real network just to see how the network stands up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ramamurthy, for your inputs on security lab for the IIT testbed, which you said would be also upgraded for security testing. Another important point that you raised is at the interconnect because of conflict of policies. So I hope this will be addressed in the track 3 also, where the deployment aspects are taken care. And also you raised a very important point that apart from the standard supported feature, there are some additional tests required. So thank you, Professor Bhaskar Ramamurthy. Now moving on to Mr. Narendranath from NSCS. Mr. Narendranath, what, in your opinion, is the difference between security and trust in the context of equipment? We all know that there is a national security directive on the trusted sources. So could you elaborate?
Yeah, thank you. And greetings to my fellow panelists and the other participants in this workshop. I was keenly listening into my fellow panelists, and especially Mr. Hickey, when he pointed out about, the new trends that are there, and Mr. Walia talking about the enhancements that are there in release 15 and 16 to enhance the security of 5G compared to 4G. And what Professor Bhaskar Ramamurthy talked about, and the challenges that are there in security there. All of these, and the enhancement of the security features and all of that, and seeing that those features are properly implemented in network equipment and in deployments, and having a testing and certification framework is something that allows us to have an element of trust. When you talk of trust, security is one of the foundational pillars of trust, but trust goes beyond security. Just having security does not build trust. Trust is also a visible, exhibition of that the security features have been enabled, that they're functioning properly, and the communication of the message is also very important when you talk of trust. So the work that the NCCS does, the National Center for Communication Security, and we feel that Mr. Kumar would be speaking in more detail about what they're doing on that. Would actually look at, I think, the security features that they should be having, the equipment, does it have it or not, and how do they go about for ensuring that features are there, security features are there, and what do they, and that. So when this 5G and IoT has come about and these challenges have been talked about now, the government has recognized that because this 5G and IoT are, cross-sectoral, and it's a new horizontal that is there across all sectors that they will be deployed. And they impact critical infrastructure far beyond the telecommunication sector. And they also have cyber-physical impact. That is why, it was recognized that we'll have to go beyond the earlier, mandates that we had regarding security testing and certification before deployment of network elements. And also add the element about where do these equipment or the components of those equipment come from. So the issue here that was deliberated is that there are two dimensions of that security, and one is, as we said, that you have a proper security design and a proper security implementation, security architecture, which is there. The other is that takes care of the quality of that, the quality aspect of it, but doesn't take care of the intent aspect of it, and whether the organization that is supplying the equipment or the supply chain to which the equipment comes through, what is the intent of that organization? So how do you measure that, or how do you take care of that? Because if somebody has a malicious intent, it would be very difficult, despite testing mechanism, if intentionally some malware is inserted or some improper configuration is done. It might be difficult to catch all of that. So it is important to take care of that element for ensuring the overall security, that we look at the sources from where the equipment comes. That is where the intent part comes about. And the National Security Directive of the telecommunication sector that we talked about is seeking to address that aspect of it. So here we look at the ownership pattern of these companies and who are the board of directors, or what is the holding of that company, and where do they operate from, and how do the updates and upgrades take place after the equipment is delivered? Where do these come from? And also the capability of the company to actually maintain the supplies over the period of the life of the equipment, and in geopolitical situation, how are they situated, and whether they can fulfill the contractual obligations that they have committed themselves to. So these are some of the elements that are taken care of. There's another dimension that I will say that we have currently not looked at it, but I think that is required to be looked at, and either it would go from what the work the NC6 is doing, or from what we are doing in terms of the processes and procedures that the companies have in place for ensuring repeatability of the product quality. It's that you as the quality management system, or the ISO 27001 or business continuity practices that the companies have. So we have to look at those aspects also to ensure that the element of trust is enhanced. So these are some of the initial thoughts that I've got. The other aspect we find is that how do we enhance, the vendor diversity, and that is an aspect that's been talked about. That because of, if there is a disruption in the supply chain, it should not result with a limited vendor availability. If there's a disruption in the supply chain, it should not result in that the country is put to ransom because of that. So how do we increase vendor diversity? And there's work going on, and there's one initiative about the Open Ready Access Network. But there are challenges there in terms of when you have multiple vendors coming in. How do you ensure security by design among all of them? How do you integrate all of these elements together into one particular equipment? That is another challenge that is there. So I think these are something that we can take forward as we enter into the dialogue.
So thank you, Narendra ji. So you have clearly explained the difference between trust and security, with trust going beyond security. Moving on to Mr. R. Babu Srinivas from NCCS. So what is the status of various security standards, ITSARs as we call, pertaining to 5G network equipment?
Yes, sir.
Actually, you all know that under MTCT scheme, every telecom product has to undergo security testing. So the drafting of standards for the telecom products is entrusted to us, along with the designation of labs for the security testing. So as far as 5G is concerned, you all agree that it is kind of, I mean, it is a paradigm shift compared to the other technologies. A lot of this network function initialization, SDN, and cloud native applications, all those come into play. So what is happening is there are a plethora of standard bodies which develop standard for those things. And the 5G introduced a lot of IP-based protocols. They have their own vulnerabilities, and the open source protocols, open source software is being used very widely in the product development and all. All those things add the special dimension to the security aspects of the standards that what we are developing now. So I mean the threat landscape have now expanded further. The SCAS, that's what being developed by the 3GPP, is for only for limited number of core network functions. Nevertheless, we are working very hard. We have multi-pronged strategy. We have to supplement our effort in ITSA development. We have tied up with some eminent institutions. Probably, sir, I mean, we are sure that in the Q2 of this next financial year, we'll be able to come out with the ITSA for 11 elements. We are not stopping here. We are parallelly working with other institutions for developing standards for the left out core network functions and the RAN. RAN is definitely a challenge for us because RAN is continuously evolving. The ORAN, small cell forum, they have that. I mean, the standards are yet to be matured. So, I mean, we are ready in that aspect, sir, in developing standards. As far the labs are concerned, see, we have, I mean, we got a go ahead from our headquarters on designation of the lab. We have multiple rounds of discussion with the prospective labs, and the response is really encouraging. Sir, we are hoping to get few of them designated in the Q2 of 22-23.
Thank you, Mr. Babu, for giving planned action regarding the 5G XRs and also on the lab front. So this brings to an end the first round of the panel discussion. So we are left with 17 minutes. Going forward in the second round, I will request all the panelists to be quick, preferably within 1-2 minutes, so that we have time for question and answers of about 5 minutes in the end. So coming to Mr. Hickey now, Mr. Babu Srinivas raised an important observation about the third-party software and open source software. So how do you handle this part when you do your product testing? Over to Mr. Hickey.
Okay, yes, and you know that certainly is it's an area that needs more focus with the complexity of 5G products, with the use of all the new technologies that you know that we, both myself and the other panelists spoke about. That needs a particular focus. I mean, central has been mentioned. Central to all of this is security by design. So, as a vendor developing these products, certainly as part of a network, but even at the product level, security by design has to be key to it all. There has to be you know a very much a focus with security from your threat and risk analysis at the start to your looking at your baseline security, testing. It's been mentioned by many panelists from the very outset of developing your products or the vendor's products, automated testing, the use of security tools, automated testing tools, automation of vulnerability analysis, regression testing, in terms of third party and particularly open source as well. The selection of the third party components is key to this. So as mentioned, the trustworthiness of the third party, what's their reputation in terms of software quality, in terms of how they do vulnerability management, checking the level of security by design that those third party institutions do, particularly if they are actual companies as opposed to the open source. So that whole area of verifying how they do their security by design in terms of open source components, then when developers or companies are selecting them using reputable sources. There are very reputable sources out there, and there are criteria for how you measure that as well. So that is key to it. And obviously then when a developer, when a vendor takes in these open source third-party components, they have to go through the whole cycle of security by design, the whole cycle of verifying their quality, that there's no vulnerabilities, that there's continuous testing as well to ensure that vulnerabilities are discovered and are remediated as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. You raised a very important point about automation of testing and selection of trustworthy partners. So thank you for that. Coming to Mr. Jagdeep Walia from Ericsson, how are you prepared in Ericsson, and whether do you foresee any challenges, Jagdeep?
Yeah, yes, sir. We have been, we've been, I would say, actively participating along with the NCCS and the OT over the last couple of years. I mean, when it comes to security testing, of the telecom nodes, and also we've been participating in the vendor consultation that have been done in the past, and also contributing with all the other stakeholders. And internally, we are working to ensure, that our products comply to the Indian telecom security assurance requirements. Though we already have actually successfully passed the evaluation of a comparable scheme from GSM and ESAS, which is based on this CAS requirements. But then obviously there are certain India-specific requirements that have been included. So we are really looking and working towards ensuring that we can comply to all these requirements, and then we have made significant progress, overall, I would say. At the same time, as I said, there are always, some challenges that would be when there is something trying to do. And here, I think we see a few challenges to fulfill on ground, operational perspective. And I think here we stakeholders need to, work closely to ensure a smooth rollout of security testing regime. And I'll touch briefly on a few of these in interest of time. One of the requirements, for example, is to test every software and hardware version for a product. So here we would like to highlight, the security is more of a software function than hardware function. And therefore, one suggested approach can be that, one sample model can be put to test for the security functionalities as outlined in the ITSA document. Second is the expectation around testing of all released software updates and patches. Here, suggestion is that the security compliance for each software product should be tested and certified only once, and for each new release or upgrade, during the validity period of the certificate, OEM can provide a undertaking. And then there are a few other points around vulnerability management, I think, which we need to have a discussion and agreement how we can address these. Finally, it's also important to mention, I think, as was being also pointed out before, security is amalgamation of security features and capability that you would have in the product, but also it depends on the implementation and operation of these capabilities in the network. So I think both the aspects have to be considered to ensure that we can have secured nodes and then overall telecom network in the country. So I think that is what I would like to highlight briefly.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jagdeep. This I will request Mr. Babu to answer little later, Mr. Babu, but first, because I want to follow the sequence, please.
Okay.
Coming to Professor Bhaskar Ramamurthy. Professor, could you throw some light, because we are going to have ORAN. ORAN development is there, and the whole structure is going to be compact unit, distributed unit, and a remote unit. Or a unit. So could you throw some light on the security challenges there?
I do not see, I mean, I may be wrong, but I do not see any specific challenges because of the sort of coming in of overhand. I mean, there, in a sense, if you are going to mix and match products from different vendors, as was mentioned by one of the other panelists, the telecom operator who's doing this, who's, let's say, by procuring the DU from one vendor and let's say the RU from another vendor, will naturally have to go through, for thorough analysis and then testing, etc., for security to make sure that, I mean, particularly, and I think, see, the point is, it's not the physical connection between the RU and the DU is still very much under the control of the telecom operator. So it's not that easy for a attack. Completely, even if they're of course if they're planning on wireless backhaul, there's a lot of IAB happening in 5G. Then one has to be careful, and one could have rogue base stations. So but it would fall within the. I think the operator will have to do thorough analysis and testing before deciding to mix and match vendors and make sure that what solution they're deploying has been is secure. But as long as they're going till the point where they're going for integrated wireless backhaul, I would say it's fairly safe. I mean, it's been going on for a while now. Microwave backhaul has been used for a long time by operators from 2G days onwards, and they are usually procured from different vendor. And so there, this is a well understood area. I would think there's no big issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Coming to Mr. Anurag from CDOT. See, you are also involved as a developer. You are a group leader in CDOT for all this 5G development also. So what steps do you feel are important for while having development process?
Sir, as I think it has been mentioned by the fellow speakers also, the one is the importance of having, from a security perspective, having the security by design. So right from the inception of the design process, and also like what was mentioned by Mr. Walia, that the implementation aspect is also crucial from the perspective of how the security is getting finally embedded into the product. So I think those aspects need to be considered while actually doing the implementation, the design and implementation. Anyway, from the perspective of the standards, I think 3GPP and other bodies are actually specifying the security standards to a level of detail. So I think a close follow-up of that, and also then finally the testing or the product is something which is going to be pretty crucial.
Thank you, Anurag. Moving quickly to Mr. Narendranath. What do you think technologies like AI and blockchain, they can play a role in ensuring 5G supply chain security?
It's not only, yeah, I'm audible here. So it's not only, I mean, when you talk of these technologies, they are very important in the security field, not only in the case of supply chain and all. Because of the volume of devices that are deployed, the volume of traffic that is there, we have talked about automation and orchestration that it's been mentioned by one of the fellow panelists earlier. So you would require AI tools to handle, the number of incidents and then to understand the patterns that are happening in the networks to take care of the security incidents and then take mitigative actions or do predictive, some sort of a predictive policing of the networks. So those tools would be AI would be very important. Blockchain per se, as for logistics and all for supply chains, they have started being used. So it would be important, for when we're talking in terms of sourcing, when we look at, even from where the components are coming from of the equipment, and also trying to find out where they're getting deployed. Let's say tomorrow one of the components, it's detected that it has got some vulnerability, and we are interested in finding out where exactly that particular component and which equipment across the country is being deployed. It's important to have visibility into that and to take quick action to see that all of those things are patched. We have complete visibility on that. Yeah, so it's important for us to use the blockchain technology for that, for keeping track of the unique identities that we would like to get for the equipment and for the products that are there, and the components that go into the products, both the software and hardware components that go into this product. So it would be important for that. Having said that, there are a couple of other points that I wanted to talk about because I have an opportunity to talk here. Is that one is that a formal risk analysis process should be there. When I talk on the Department of Telecom, looking at it sectorally, as for the telecom sector, I expect that either at NTIFF level or NCCS or PEC level, there should be a formal risk analysis process sectoral and for enterprise level to do that and to find out exactly what can go wrong, and then look at what security measures are required to be taken. The other thing that could be done is it's a lack of capability or capacity within. We have multiple service providers who are there, and some of the bigger ones are real capable. They've got very good human resource infrastructure within themselves to understand what's required to be done. But that you cannot say about everybody. So maybe work on a reference architecture, which for an operator working with the industry, so that people know that this is at least basic. Like we had the baseline, we have also talked about baseline security. So work out a reference architecture so that people know that this is a basic reference architecture that they can look at and this is how it's to be implemented. So that would help in that. So these are a couple of things I thought I would like to mention here. In addition to, of course, that AI and blockchain definitely would be utilized. Both from monitoring the traffic and then ensuring that security of the networks per se, not only network equipment, and also the blockchain to see how do you have secure supply chains. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narendranath. And now, Mr. Babu, can you respond to the issues raised by Mr. Jagdeep from Dixon?
Yeah, actually, he raised very valid, very pertinent issues. The thing is that we never adopted the coercive approach. Our approach has been always some kind of consultative approach and collaborative approach. Okay, what we are trying to do here is consensus-driven convergent approach. As far as the class you referred, that related to the software security, the vendor, when they develop the software stack, they develop their own. They take it, they buy it from the third party, and they take it from the open source. So the thing is that we can't have blind faith that open source software is secure. It's not the case always. When you are developing a software, you have to take care that entire the secure software development life cycle. During the software development life cycle, security procedural processes are strictly followed. This has to be ensured. How will you ensure these things? Only when you subject your security software to the testing. So when we are not what you call, we can continuously engage on how to do the testing and all. Probably at a mutually agreeable location, we can subject the software for the testing. This answers the first question raised by the Mr. Jagdeep Walia. And one thing you should always note that security is not a light touch approach. Okay, we have to draw a line. Fine. So without you, we can't do anything. Okay. So what I am trying to say is that we will work together. We will make this country's network more secure and resilient. Regarding second point related to the version change and all, whether you have to subject in those cases for the security testing and all, there are enough classes in our MTCT scheme which takes care. If I remember correct, that you need not do it immediately if there is a version change. Anyway, we'll come back on this. And similarly for the vulnerability assessment, it's one of a critical area, but what you have to do it, right? You also agree with us.
So thank you, Babu Srinivas. Now there is, though we
sir,
are just.
I have the input on these things. The software patch, bug fix, update. It will be permitted with temporary certificate for 1 year. So there are enough production for the OEMs. The safeguards are there in the OEMs, so they need not worry much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Babu, for answering all the queries. We have just overshot the time, but so there are two raised hands that I can see. So
Thank
first, if we can, Mr. Uday Kumar Upar, can you raise your query, and you can also mention the panelists, please. Can we give the mic to Mr. Uday Kumar, please? Can we unmute him?
Yes, sir, I have given right.
Good afternoon, sir.
I have given.
Yeah, Mr. Uday Kumar Upar, quickly, please.
My question is, sir, when Indian government companies will launch, like BSNL, MTNL will launch 5G?
Be asked the different forum.
I think there is a deployment forum. Maybe that question is more relevant there. There is nobody from MTNL, BSNL on this panel. So maybe this question can be then taken care. Then next is Mr.
We talked about security also. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Ramna, I think I could. Mr. Ramna, please.
Yes, sir, I have given right, sir.
Sir, good morning, all of you. Sir, I have three queries only. One is only, sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Sir, you are audible, but Ramna, please don't mind. We have to be very quick here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Sir, the one is only now, as you know, that 5G is supporting some sort of, STN, NFV, and cloud computing and all now. With that only, user plane and data plane, both are only some sort of, both are separated. But when it is separated and all, certainly this communication between the users or applications and control plane, data plane, all through APIs, I think application programming interfaces. But what I understood and all, these APIs are open to, it can be intended software or unintended software also. So in this scenario, how that OEMs are going to address this security concern? And sir, and one more thing also, as you know that now every user is having apprehension that only that with that cloud computing and all, everything only data processing only will be done in the cloud only, but that is in the somebody else in the hands of somebody else. That is the case and all. How we can address that user privacy in this scenario? And last question only, one thing only to the Professor Bhaskaramurthy, as he highlighted only, he said that only in that 5G environment, it is possible that only hosting fake bastions. But as you know that only 2G only, because in the absence of mutual authentication, only hosting rogue bastions possible. But in that 4G, 5G, since these networks are supporting mutual authentication, only we would like to understand only from you that only how it is possible to host only base stations in the 5G environment. Sir, over to Mr.
Okay, thank you, Ramana ji. Professor Bhaskar, please, would you like to take that?
Sir, I would like to take it, but I'm not very clear what the question was. Can somebody just summarize it for me?
Mr. Ramna, can you be?
Yes, sir.
I think
Mr. Babu probably can.
Yeah, sir. Actually, SAR's question was related to the API because in the core network, I mean, in the 5G, we are using multiple APIs developed by say the APIs may not be secure. How we are ensuring the security? I mean, in the API, RESTful API environment? That was the first question.
Okay, I am not able to answer that, Mr. Babu. If you can answer it, please go ahead.
No, I think one of the Ericsson and Nokia might be in a better position because they're talking of communication.
Let me take a shot at it. So basically, from API security, I mean, as was clarified, and as I mentioned also, when it comes to 5G core, obviously we have the service-based architecture, we have service-based interfaces, and that is where I think I mentioned that you have things like mutual authentication and authorization between different network functions, which means that before they start to talk to each other, they would actually get authenticated and authorized what services one function can take from the other function, and this is done through the use of TLS and O2, which is for the authorization. So authentication based on TLS, and then O2 is used for the authorization. So that is how you would ensure that on these APIs, I mean, then the relevant person is actually or machine is talking to other network function. And then when you are also exposing your core towards, let's say, third parties, then on that particular interface, I don't now remember, it was I think whatever, there's the interface, you need to have, let's say, API gateway, which would have relevant security measures so as to ensure that you do not get DOS attacks or those kind of things coming in from the, let's say, the consumers of the services that are being provided by the 5G core. So that way you address, I would say, API related concerns when it comes to 5G networks. The second point around was on
Cloud computing. I mean, the platform functions are orchestrated against multiple hosts, various hosts. How they are ensuring security?
So that would totally depend. Look, that totally depends on operators. To an extent, would deploy the core on a private cloud. I think where it comes to a point, and which is under their control. So that is fine. I mean, and whatever policies they would apply. I think the question comes in when you are talking about certain use cases where you want to place the core closer to the edge. I mean, certain use cases where you need to have very low latencies. I mean, so where you will have to move the edge closer to the core closer to the core, and that is where then operators could use a private or a public cloud. And if they are using a public cloud, then they need to have relevant understanding in terms of how the security needs to be handled, what part of security lies on the part of TSP and what lies on part of the cloud service provider. And then that should be really very clear. And there are security measures that are available in a way which cloud service providers can also provide to ensure that the data that is pertaining to a certain TSP is basically secured, and that totally depends on what kind of security the TSP puts on the cloud service provider. So that has to be very clearly discussed and agreed between the TSP and the cloud service provider. So those are, I would say, things that are there that would ensure, even if you are hosting cloud your core in the cloud, then this can be ensured that security is done. And I don't remember the third question. What was the third question?
Related to privacy.
So Jagdeep, can you be real quick because we have already overshot by 10 minutes?
Sure.
Please.
Fine, sir. I think on the rogue base station, I mean, I think in 5G, I would say it's only in 5G that we have now this encrypted IMSI, which actually protects against the rogue base station attack. Even though we had mutual authentication within the 4G, but still, if somebody was able to sniff the IMSI out of the air interface, then he could use it in terms of tracking the user and also then do an eavesdropping. But in 5G, it has been made extremely difficult because even though if he finds out, but he the IMSI or whatever you say, the SUPI, he will not be able to really know who the subscriber is. So in that way, privacy of the end customer is maintained.
Thank you, Mr. Jagdeep Alia from Ericsson. So friends, it's time to wrap up So I thank my esteemed panelists, Mr. Walia from Ericsson, Mr. Anurag Gupta from CDOT, Professor Bhaskar Ramurthy from IIT Madras, Mr. G. Naren Nath, and Mr. Babu Srinivas. And a special thank for Mr. John Hickey from Nokia, who joined early morning at 5:30 Dublin time. I think he had some work. He had also left this thing. So I also thank Team NTI Prit for arranging this. And over to Mr. Bhalla now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I would like congratulate and thanks to Mitra sir and all the panelists of this track for a wonderful discussion. I hope these discussion will be very useful for designing and deployment of the 5G network in India. Now we will start track 2, that is security challenges in 5G devices. So this track will be moderated by Sri PK Singh sir, DDG Security Assurance DOT Headquarter. Just I will introduce to PK Singh sir. He is an officer of Indian Telecom Service with over 30 years of experience. He has vast experience in laying down the technical specification for various telecom products, networks, elements, also testing and evaluating them against the laid down specification and international standards. He is also acting as a Chief Information Security Officer of Department of Telecommunication. Now over to you, sir, and I request you to introduce your all the panelists of your track, sir. Thank you very much. Sir, your mic is off, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And once again, we would like to congratulate NTI PRIT for organizing this seminar. My sincere greetings to all the senior officers of DOT, other stakeholders who have joined from industry and other parts of the sector. In this discussion, a panel discussion on the challenges in the 5G device security, which is a very relevant topic as the 5G network is just looming from the horizon, and it is expected that within next 5-6 months we'll have started the commercial services, and once the commercial services, the commercial networks are launched to provide 5G, there is not going to be an end in the development of the numbers of devices which are going to ride over the 5G communication networks. So to introduce the subject, I'll basically first say a few words, and then I'll introduce the panelists. And my request to all the panelists would be that the questions which are going to be put across to them, to have a comprehensive discussion on all the aspects of the challenges in the 5G device security. Not more than 2 minutes are to be spent. There are going to be 2 rounds of questions. So in all, 4 to 5 minutes is what is available for all the panelists, and if time permits, then we'll have the questions from the participants. Over the past few years, as use of ICT has proliferated, there has been a rapidly growing awareness on the part of all ICT users of the need to ensure effective protection against the cyber threats that continue to increase and diversify with alarming rapidity. The widespread use of various devices over the networks, and in particular, the ability to access and control so many aspects of daily life via communications, has meant that it is now essential to build solid, secure protections into industrial, commercial, and consumer products and services, so as to ensure that sufficient attention is paid to security through the entire life cycle of the product or service. Mobile devices like smartphones, tablets, and other mobile devices with similar features and capabilities have become a widespread computing platform for both personal and enterprise level usage. Mobile devices face a number of threats that pose a significant risk to personal and business data. And like desktops, smartphones and tablets are susceptible to various type of attacks. But due to portability, they are also highly vulnerable to physical attacks. And same is the case with other 5G devices also. And here I would like to share a certain uh, statistics about what the IoT devices and the devices which are going to come through the deployment of 5G networks is. So with the advent of IPv6 and the wide deployment of Wi-Fi networks, IoT devices are growing at a dangerously fast pace. When I say dangerously, it is really dangerously fast pace. And researchers estimate that by 2025, the number of active wireless connected devices will exceed 40 billion. And IDC predicts that by 2025, there will be 55.7 billion connected devices worldwide, 75% of which will be connected to an IoT platform. And IDC also estimates that the data generated from these connected devices to be 73.1 zettabyte by 2025, growing from 18.3 zettabytes in 2019. And most of these data is going to arise from security and video surveillance, but industrial IoT applications will also take a significant part or portion of this data. Hence, it is very much important that we take due care of the security in these devices. And to deliberate on this particular topic and the various facets of the device security, we have with us a panel of very distinguished speakers who are experts in their fields. We have Professor Sandeep K. Shukla, Professor of Computer Sciences and Engineering Department at IIT Kanpur. He is an IEEE Fellow and ACM Distinguished Scientist. He was the editor-in-chief of the ACM Transactions on Embedded Computing Systems during 2013 to 2020. He is currently Associate Editors of ACM Transactions on Cyber Physical Systems and Journal of the British Blockchain Association. In the past, he has served as associate editors of IEEE Transactions on Computers, IEEE Transaction on Industrial Informatics, IEEE Design and Test, and IEEE Embedded Systems. Before joining IIT Kanpur in 2015, he was a professor at Virginia Tech University, USA. He has served as ACM Distinguished Speaker and IEEE Computer Society Distinguished Visitor in the past. He has authored over 200 peer-reviewed journals and conference papers and authored or edited 10 books. He has been awarded the Presidential Early Career Award in Science and Engineering in 2004, the Bessel Award by Humboldt Foundation in 2009, a Distinguished Alumnus Award by Sunny Albani in 2007, a Ramanujan Fellowship in 2015. His major research interest in cybersecurity of critical infrastructure, cybersecurity of IT and OT systems, and applications of blockchain technology in security and privacy. I welcome you, Professor, to this panel discussion. And we are very sure that we would be benefited by your wide experience. The next panelist is Dr. Vinosh Babu James, Associate Director of Technical Standards, Qualcomm India. Dr. Vinosh Babu James leads Qualcomm standardization activities in India. He engages Indian and regional stakeholders on matters related to radio standardization, harmonization, and regulation. Vinosh has joined Qualcomm in 2011 and has served in several roles spanning engineering and standardizations. He has held several technical roles in the past, including serving as the chairman of the 5G working group in TSDSI and recently as the chairman of the Future Communication Technologies in the TEC. He is also the convener of the 5G India Forum and a member of the TIG 6G created by DOT. He has a PhD in electrical engineering from IIT Madras with specialization in wireless communications. He holds several patents and international publications to his name. He is also a senior member of IEEE. Welcome, Dr. Joe, Dr. Vinosh, and we would be benefited by your experience and specialization in the field of wireless communications. The next panel member is N. Janardhan, Director Security Assurance in the National Center for Communication Security, a premier organization of DOT which has been entrusted with the responsibility of developing the telecom security testing and certification ecosystem in the country. Director N. Janardhan, he is an ITS officer of ITS 1999 batch. He has done his BTech from SVU University College of Engineering Tirupati and MTech from IIT Kanpur. And after joining the Department of Telecommunication as an ITS officer in 1999, he has served in various capacities. And for the last 5 to 7 years, he has been involved in the telecom security standardization and testing. Welcome, Shri N. Janardhanji. We would be greatly benefited with your experience. The next panel member is Mr. Sharad Arora. And Mr. Sharad Arora, I would say, doesn't require an detailed introduction. He is an authority in security in himself. He is a telecom security and IoT expert and technology enthusiast and entrepreneur. He is credited with bringing the solderable SIM to the Indian market through his entrepreneurial initiatives at Sensorize. And it is for all the participants that Sensorize is the company which also is the first VNO to offer services as a M2M service provider in the country. Sharad is a prolific contributor to the Indian and global telecom, IT, security, and IoT ecosystems, contributing to standards, policy, regulation, and the overall sustainable development of the ecosystem. Sharad is member of the TSDSI as its member of the governing council. He is also chair of the study group on the system security, outreach committee, and startup task force. He contributes to several TEC working groups and has authored several standards and technical reports, including the recent global ITU standard on the bootstrapping framework. Sharad also contributes to BIS LITD 28 and is an author of the BIS IoT reference architecture. The list is endless. He is, I'll summarize, he has wide experience in the field of telecommunication and telecommunication security. What I would like to mention is that about his hobbies, he is an avid golfer, likes reading and driving in the hills. Welcome, Sharad Arora ji. We would be benefited with your wide experience. The next panel member is Shri Aman Jain. He is Chief Engineer in Mobile Security Technical Group under Security Solutions R&D Department of Samsung Electronics. He has been there for more than 9.5 years, and Aman Jain has pursued his full-time Masters in Technology from Delhi Technological University in Information Systems. And he has worked upon web accessibility for physically challenged people, which is, I'll say, very much required for making available the various devices to the specially capable persons. He is leading a team of security engineers and responsible to provide many security solutions for data that is in rest, and few of them are secure storage, namely the Vault Keeper, on-device encryption, key attestation using device root key and Samsung attestation key. With these solutions having been implemented, he has good knowledge on working over trust zone execution environment, providing isolation to applications running in rich OS, specifically in the Android environment. He has published patents in field of security, providing solutions to portable SD card encryption and lock/unlock screen using haptic feedback. He has worked upon research projects with IIT Roorkee to provide zero-day defense solutions. He has actively involved with multiple government bodies like STQC, NCCS, BIS, Telecom Engineering Center, etc. For discussions about various security aspects on multiple layers of Samsung devices. So we have drawn the panel from, I'll say, from all parts of the industry, the standardization bodies, the equipment manufacturers, the chip designers, the academia, and the way in which we are going to organize this is we have framed certain questions to cover all aspects of the challenges in the mobile device security. Each question, I would request the panel member to not to take more than 2 minutes to answer. Hence, precise information is what is appreciated. And if the time permits, then we'll have the questions from the participants. So to start with, we all know that mobile handsets have become a great computing platform like desktops. This question is to the Samsung representative, Mr. Aman. Mobile handsets have become a great computing platform like desktops. And as we know, the desktops are susceptible to malwares like virus, worms, trojans, etc. So the question is, do mobile handsets are also susceptible to the similar malwares? And are there any salient vulnerabilities and risks which are peculiar to mobile handsets? And what do you feel are the security features that should be implemented in the handsets to avoid the same? And what are the existing features which have been implemented? Over to you, Mr. Aman.
Yeah, good morning, all of you, and I am happy to answer about it. Yeah, definitely, mobile devices are vulnerable for malwares. Like you said, the desktops and the laptops and other devices are. So there are a few things that we can see in mobiles if it is happening, that they are under attack of malwares, like devices working very slow, and you are not, like, your battery drainage is more, and you can see some data is sent to the network. Okay, these things can be happen. Generally, Android, the Android in a way the Android is formed, the application gets its isolation from each and every application. Still, there is chance of having malwares, and because of that, because some applications are malware but acts like a benign application. So this is a very, very difficult situation where it is very difficult to handle such malwares. Okay, and in that case, what happens if, like, you are playing some games, or you are just clicking on some advertisement and something, so your data will be sent to a network. Okay, and you will not be known. Okay, so for that, Samsung has done the partnership with McAfee. I'm just talking about Samsung, and definitely some other companies or the other OEMs also are doing this. So as you asked, like, what can we do and what can be the features should be there and can be there. So like Samsung has partnership with McAfee, and it provides protection to the devices for these malware attacks. Okay, also whenever we download some application from Google Play Store, okay, this is by default given by the Google, so they also do the play protect. They check that application whichever we are downloading, and they say that it is a play protected and now you can download. So these are the features, those are already available. Also, Samsung phone is providing a Knox platform security, where we ensure security at each and every layer. Okay, we provide runtime protection using the kernel protection. We provide the hardware root of trust, and these things and these solutions. Using these solutions, we can ensure that even though our device is compromised, but we can just protect many of the things. We can protect sensitive data. Also, I won't take much time. I'll just want to focus on one thing, Though there are so many solutions, those are available, they directly or indirectly work upon very like static malware detections. And though the companies are working upon the dynamically malware detection, as I worked with IIT Roorkee for this project, this was a research project, and we are trying to provide a context based security, because as in 5G there is the speed is no limit, speed has no limit, and everything is like IoT devices are raising. So definitely security concerns are there. So just to provide the zero day defense, we need a dynamically detection using a context based security. So this is the solution that
Okay.
we should
Thank you, Amanji. Thank you for providing valuable information. We move on to the next query, which is related to the same. It has been observed that pre-installed apps and third-party apps in the mobile handsets, they seek access to a lot of non-essential data for these apps. This query is to Professor Sandeep K. Shukla. These apps provide user-friendly features and functionalities, but there is always a suspicion that these apps exfiltrate sensitive information. In this regard, what is your observation, and what mechanism do you prescribe for increasing the trust in using these applications? Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. So we have done extensive testing of so far 4 different manufacturers' phones. These phones are all less than 25,000 rupees, and these phones are very common in the market. And so 4 companies that we have tested, all of them have bundled bloatware in their system. So we have tested the network communication. We have used certificates to actually decipher the SSL traffic. We also have done testing with SIM and without SIM installed. We have tested with Google account created on the phone or without. And we found that there are numerous, more than 1,000 different IP addresses that are being communicated to by this bloatware. And turns out that this IP addresses, when you go and find the list of malicious IPs, many of these IPs belong to the list of malicious IPs, at least by one site that listed them as suspicious malicious IP addresses. Some of them also goes to Tencent and other companies which are kind of more suspicious than the others. So we found that in the countries like China has made a law that you cannot put bloatware which is uninstallable. You have to provide users with the ability to uninstall all the bloatware. South Korea has banned bundling bloatware with the software with the platform, and also European Union is also looking to enact something that will disable that will require that the users are able to unload the bloatware without having to root the device. We can do it with rooting the device or various other techniques, but common people don't know how to do that. So therefore, this bloatware is a problem. Now, as I always say, that even though I am a technologist, I always say that security is about not necessarily solvable everything by technology, and there these standards and the regulations and laws have to come up, and that's where I think that so we have created extensive reports that we will provide to the DOT, some of it which has already been provided. But I think it is time that India enacts laws and regulations that will stop this bloatware problem. And also there should be other laws that should decide, that should make sure that these companies are give full disclosure about which IP addresses and which domains their software, their system is connecting to so that the users can make risk decisions. And also, they should not be going to IP addresses outside India. Data localization should be enabled here. So I think that there is a lot to do there, but it has to be, it's not so much based on technology, it's based on the regulation and laws that needs to be enacted.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. So basically what you are saying is there is a need to have regulation and its enforcement
Yes.
To prevent the menace of the bloatwares. We'll continue discussion on this aspect, but we have to cover all other aspects also. So the next question is to Mr. Sharad Arora, and this is regarding the 5G devices which are being developed and deployed. They basically fall under a very wide spectrum in terms of computing, storage, and communicating capabilities. Now, what challenges does this bring in for securing the ecosystem of 5G from the perspective of device security? And what has been done and what further needs to be done to address this issue? Over to you, Sharad Arora ji.
Thank you, Singh sir. Morning. I hope I'm audible. Good
Yes,
afternoon
you are.
to all
Please
the
go ahead,
panelists. Thank you for your kind words at the start, sir. I think we have picked up and DOT has picked up the theme very early. I personally feel very proud and empowered that we are going to act in time. Although you said that the bus is already leaving the stop, but I think we are there in a large measure. Answering your question, which is the 5G devices, and it's not just the 5G devices in reality, it's a lot of devices, because in my opinion, the proliferation of devices, sensors, is going to be a multi-technology proliferation, and it will use all types of technologies. But since the subject itself is horizontal, I think the sort of challenges that you will see are both physical and cyber in nature, first and foremost. Because when devices are being deployed, they will be deployed across a vast swath of geography and use cases. And what you will see is fragmentation of ownership. And also what you will see is the challenge pertaining to identification of use cases and the criticality of those use cases. And what you will see is the need for that classification to lend itself to device security and data security. And also then it will bring along, so the challenges of physical security, network security, data security, and also privacy security, sir. In my opinion, those are the things that we will have to, those four are my pick. There are going to be many, but those are four are my pick for what I would focus on if I were asked to start something that works well. And of course, what you said also makes sense, that there are going to be so many issuers, sir, and so many custodians and so many users, that this fragment and service providers, it is not going to be one service provider. So this fragmentation between manufacturers, service providers, issuers, use cases, and custodians is going to bring along the second challenge, sir, of practice statements and registration of service providers and the mandatory testing. So that's my view, sir. I've got to take my 2 minutes.
Thank you, Sharad ji. You have mentioned testing in your concluding sentence. So moving along with the testing and certification of these diverse set of devices. Yeah, first of all, I would like to apologize of mentioning 5G devices. Devices are basically going to be technology agnostic, but it was just continuing with the coming on horizon of the 5G network that I made use of this term 5G device. It is applicable to the devices making use of the communication networks of any technology. So moving on with the next set of next question. This question is towards Mr. Janardhan from NCCS. As Sharad Arora has said that in his concluding sentence, the testing and certification of these diverse set of devices. Now, developing the testing and certification of 5G device ecosystem is highly desirable in the country. Now, what challenges do you foresee, and what do you think could be done to effectively address this aspect? over to you, Janardhan ji.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to all, sir. Sir, this developing the testing and certification of 5G devices ecosystem is challenging. The challenges lie in framing security, assurance requirements with various OS and a large number of third-party apps and a lot number of IoT devices that are likely to be deployed in 5G scenario, and ability of these service providers to capture a lot of personal information. So for that, we are involving academia and industry to add to our efforts in framing security assurance requirements, that is Indian specific. Then other challenge is that the security assurance requirements have to address the probable vulnerabilities and malware and app security and security of personal data accessing. So in that case, in the case of 5G, the application will be hosted virtually or on cloud in a diversified manner, and MTM communication is a major challenge. The cloud security and application security and their interaction is likely to pose a larger challenge, and which we may have to address as we go forward. Then other challenge, developing ecosystems like telecom security test labs are capable of establishing infra and equipping the labs with test tools. Then finally, the challenge, enforcing our IT SIR, that security assurance requirement, it's SIR, with 1 year lead time would be a great challenge, sir. So this is my view, sir.
Okay, thank you, Janardhan ji. So what you basically say is that there is a need of having the testing and certification ecosystem, but there are certain challenges like non-availability of that telecom test security test labs. What I feel is that if we are able to provide a firm roadmap for the security testing, I'm very sure that the telecom security test labs will be set up, will emerge in the country. Now, moving on with the manufacturing, India has emerged as the second largest mobile handset manufacturer in the world. This question is to Dr. Vinosh. India has emerged as the second largest mobile handset manufacturer in the world, with many outsourced manufacturing units like Winstrom, Foxconn, etc., setting up manufacturing facilities, and also the OEMs also, the brand owners also setting up the manufacturing facilities. This is very good for the Atmanirbhar Bharat policy of the Government of India. Now, here my question is, what practices are followed, or what practices should be followed and mandated if required to ensure that the finished product is free from any security vulnerability? This question is to Dr. Vinosh. Over to you, Vinosh.
Good day, and thank you, sir, for that question. So we are a technology company. We take a systems approach. So I'll take a systems approach to this.
Yes.
So if you look into this question and you look into the way things are, 95% or even more of successful attacks are either due to poorly programmed, poorly maintained, or poorly configured frameworks. So the solution has been emphasized again in this panel whole day by several speakers. Thou have to do security by design framework. That's the way we have to start. That's the way we'll have to go, and that's the way we'll have to evolve. And this security by design concept, it applies to both hardware and software. The approach itself, is robust. It incorporates commonly used cybersecurity strategies and techniques into the architectural design process itself, right? And these tactics, they ensure that the implementation of necessary security protocols or procedures, should the systems, fall under attack. At least, or at the least, they should include things like authorization and accountability, authentication, data confidentiality and availability, and system integrity. So if these can be ensured as part of the framework being put together, I think we are already in a good shape. I think we did see something of this for IoT from the TEC IoT division. I think it's work in progress or almost done. I think Sharad is part of it. He should be having more context of that. I think the beauty is, when we have a security features are included in the design, system errors can be avoided from the very beginning, right? So that's the beauty of it. Such a security by design concept, it ensures that security controls are built into a product design and not as an afterthought, right? So from the design to the manufacturing, and as you start doing it, you have it under control, and you know what to expect and what went wrong, right? It also reduces the likelihood of cybersecurity breaches in the product development. So, including these protocols and more with architectural designs means that, we'd be ensuring that things implemented have this thing in place. So that will be what should have happened. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vinosh, for this answer. You have indicated that security by design is what is required to ensure that the finished product is free from the security vulnerability. Okay, very good response on this particular aspect. We move on to the second round of queries, and here request would be to devote not more than 1.5 minutes. The first question is to Professor Sandeep. We have recently heard a term mobile device management. Now, what exactly is meant by a mobile device management, and how does it help in security of mobile devices?
Yeah, so mobile device management is sort of like endpoint security solution where an organization can actually implement agents in each of the handsets that belongs to users or that have been issued by the company to the users, which collects enough information, including protection of the enterprise data, enterprise authentication to the enterprise, and also because of that, the visibility, the agents report everything back to the servers at the enterprise. So the security personnel there can actually find various things, including locations, the integrity of the data there, whether there is a malware in action, all this kind of information. But more than that, it can also push configurations, secure configurations. It can, according to the security policy that they want to implement, they can also push patches and antivirus signature files, etc. The problem with, so this is very good for the enterprise point of view, but it's not necessarily very good for the individual's point of view. It's very much intrusive on their privacy. So therefore, it is something of a compromise, and it should be done when the phone is issued by the company and not on the BYOD devices. But that is not how it is working right now. Recently, UP government gave students mobile handsets for studies, and apparently they put the MDM in there, and that I find is outrageous. Because that should not be done, because they are not employees. So there is a privacy concern about MDM, but MDM for enterprise point of view is kind of essential nowadays.
Thank you, Professor, for bringing out these two mutually contradictory requirements, which are fulfilled through mobile device management and its impact on the privacy and confidentiality concern. We move on to the next question, which is to Mr. Aman. Mobile device, when viewed from a technology perspective, its technology stack will comprise of the hardware, the operating systems, firmware, embedded mobile device components like baseband radio, sensors, bootloaders, isolated execution environments, etc. Now, what challenges does this bring to define the security standards and the security testing itself? A very small device, but having a whole lot of technology complexities. So I'm very sure it would be bringing a lot of challenges to defining the security standards and the security testing itself. So what are those? Mr. Aman?
Aman,
Mr.
your
Aman,
mic is off.
I think I'm not audible, right?
yeah, please. Yeah, please go ahead now.
Sure. Sure. So yeah, as you said that, yeah, mobile devices are comprised of many components, hardware, software, and different small hardwares itself. And more the components are there, so there is a more boundary or more ground to attacks, and these are more vulnerables. So definitely there is very difficulties to give the security standards. Okay, so basically if I talk about only the Samsung itself, okay, so Samsung is capable of doing so many things from the from the SoC itself, from the chip level itself, and testing for each and every hardware itself. Samsung is following so many international bodies certifications like SoC, MDFPP, and common criterias. But you can assume, if I talk about any high-end phones, so I can see more than 10 or 12 certifications that we need to take, specifically like if there is a hardware cryptographic module, so we need to take a FIPS 142. If there is a VPN related, so we need to take different certification. So according to these things, we have to take different certifications, and they are like, our phones are tested in those labs situated outside the India, and then only we got the certification. So definitely it is a challenge to acquire all those security standards. And I think Indian government is also doing with different bodies, and like STQCs are doing the research over that, like what should be the standards. But definitely it is taking more and more time. I saw that we have started the conversation like 1.5 years back, and still it is going on to decide the actual security standards, just because there is a like boundary is more, and we need to protect at each and every layer. So
yeah, thank you, Aman. Yes, the complexity in the technology in a device brings along with it the complexity in defining the standards and doing the actual testing. We move on to next set of requirements, which is more targeted towards the government of India or the agency's requirements. This query is towards Dr. Vinosh. What we have is the current lot of mobile handsets have the location capabilities based on GPS and other foreign satellite constellations. Now, recently, Government of India have launched its satellites as part of the IRNSS. Is there any roadmap of implementing the location capabilities based on IRNSS? And what may further be required for our emergency responders to get the accurate information for initiating the appropriate action in a timely manner? This question is to Dr. Vinosh. Over to you, please.
Thanks again, sir. So it's a good point, right? So a navigation scheme like a GPS is very essential, because it's going to help dispatchers track emergency response team location in the field, right? So it's a necessity, no doubt. Getting a closest team, reach out to it and do the help, that's the purpose. Do we need GPS? Do we need IRNSS or NAVIC? How is it going to be done? That's basically governed by the geopolitics. So yes, we need to have that particular scheme. I think the question is how quick will we be able to implement that in chipsets supporting all tier of devices and made available. I think our response will be like, at least from Qualcomm perspective, we have started supporting NAVIC in our chipsets with support navigation using our Indian constellation. So we have that in place. We also have support for GPS and other global positioning schemes. Substitution for NAVIC is a straightforward thing. I think the quick answer to that is, once we have a robust public protection and disaster relief scheme, a PPDR network that's laid out, system will be able to quickly leverage from the NAVIC as well as GPS and other global constellations available in the systems. So the roadmap from our side is already in place. Operators are also slowly migrating from GPS/NAVIC support. I think if you're talking about first responders, then the robust PPDR network is missing. So once that comes, the stars will get aligned, and TSPs will be able to start supporting it.
Yeah, thank you. So that basically says that if we are able to connect all the dots, we'll have a complete, comprehensive, and robust solution available based on Indian remote navigational satellite system, ensuring Atmanirbhar Bharat. Thank you. Last question is to Mr. Sharad Arora, and this is regarding the IoT devices and gateways. These devices, they communicate by making use of TCP/IP protocols over the wide variety of networks, both licensed and unlicensed. And there is a need felt of having some form of unique identifiers being allocated to them or associated with them. What do you propose that will address this addressing mechanism? And we also heard a term which is basically security by design. So if you would throw light on what exactly is meant by security by design in terms of these devices, that would basically wrap up our panel discussion, and then we'll be open to any questions from the participants. Sharadji, over to you, please.
Am I audible again? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, please go
Chair,
ahead.
will you permit me to very quickly share my screen if I can? If I'm successful in the next 10 seconds, I will try. Or does it not work?
You can share.
No, it will. It will.
Is my
we'll have
screen,
to request. We'll have to request NTI.
Okay, it doesn't matter. I tried sharing my screen. Is it visible?
Your screen is visible now.
Okay, so the reason I did that was because this question that you asked is so important. You see something on my screen, and this has not changed, Singh Sahab, in the last 25 years. When we set up the root certification of Authority of India in 2002, it was the same. And it was the same when we started GSM operations in 1995. Point is, we need to stick with the whole concept of the CIA security triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. We need to add, and I'm reversing the flow because it becomes easier to answer the question with the last one first and the penultimate one after that. Basically, if we have for IoT, for 5G, and for applications that will run on top, the basic, and as Vinod said, I think Professor Shukla said too, and others have said as well, you have said of your own, the whole concept of security by design is about first identification. And I make a comment on that in a minute. But identification for what purpose? Identification to ensure that confidentiality, integrity, and authentication requirements are being met, to ensure that verification is being met. So earlier verification was mostly human and SIM. Now verification has to extend itself to the use case. And I will say why. And lastly, what has become very apparent and a lot of work has got done in ITU is in relation to trust. Who to trust, which domain to trust, which ICT infrastructure to trust, which device to trust, and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, and then there is a last one, which is actually not shown here, unfortunately, which is availability. With everything connected, the physicality is important, but the cyber element becomes even more important. That if you don't have availability, you're not in touch. If you're not in touch, that device cannot report properly what is going on, or that application cannot report properly. So in summary, sir, something that takes care of. And what is this something? A system, a policy, a process, and a legislation. It is not small, sir. If these four things take care of the five things that are set up here, and the sixth being availability, which is CIA verification, trust, and availability, then you will have security and trust as per security by design. In terms of the various protocols and identifiers, sir, I think there is a lot of work that has to happen, because the whole concept of the security by design in policy and practice rests on the fact that we have an identifier that can scale to 1 trillion devices that will not die halfway, like mobile number series, etc. And whilst it is expanding to that level, it is ability for that identifier to be a part of the session control, and session control means security, sir. So my quick answer to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharad. So basically, in this short 45 to 50 minutes, we have been able to cover almost all aspect of uh, the security challenge in the device security. The first step to tackle any problem is accepting the problem. So we have been able to identify and accept that yes, there are challenges in the device security. Once we have been able to accept that there are challenges, then we basically have to take the next steps, which is addressing those challenges by way of regulation, by way of technology, by way of processes, by way of capability development, by way of skill set development. As also, we have to take in this journey, we have to basically take the help of all relevant stakeholders, be the manufacturers of the devices, the chipset developers, the R&D from the perspective of addressing various challenges. The academia is also required to be taken along. So this, I'll say this battle or this war to take care of the security is not going to be handled single-handedly by any person. It has to be an army of like-minded warriors who will take on this activity, and this panel discussion will go a long way in formulating certain recommendations which will lead to the development of some kind of a task force which will be able to address the security of the devices. Now we have a few minutes for taking the questions from the participants, if there are any. Do we have any questions, or we can conclude this
Chair, if
round?
I may.
Yeah, please.
If I may, there are some chats on the chat, and there are some hands up. I can see Tejpal Singh plus 2 others. Maybe there are some chats, and there are 2 hands up. And there is a hand up from Senthil Kumar as well, Chair, if you want to prioritize.
Yes. I think we'll have to request
Mr. Tejpal, your mic is enabled, so just you can ask the question.
Yeah, I'm Senthil Kumar here. My question is to Mr. Aman Jain. We know Samsung terminal devices have Knox security platform, which is comprehensively addressing all the layers of the terminal device security. So when it comes to 5G security posture, what sort of scaling is being done for Knox platform to address 5G security challenges?
Okay. So I think this is Senthil that you have asked me the question.
Yeah, it is Mr. Senthil who has asked this question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Senthil, one thing that, as you talked about, like Knox platform is providing the security at all layers. Okay. For the few months, I have been looking to identify like what more security that we need to provide in this Knox platform to make it like more secure. So what I observe is like the current security solutions that we have integrated, those are already capable of for providing security to the 5G, because we started with the very root, like very hardware level, and we provide a root of trust. Okay, so like it was a 4G or 5G. Okay, so it is working as an interface, and so I don't think that it is more needed, or maybe definitely there are the if there are the vulnerabilities that we will work upon, but one thing that I observed is that we are providing Knox platform to different small devices itself, like IoT devices, and we are not only limited to the mobile itself, but the wearables, the IoT devices. So that in this 5G era, where each like IoT will be on the top, so each and everything can be benefited with this Knox platform or Knox security. So yeah.
Yeah, Senthil Kumar, thank you. Dr. Vinosh, would you like to add to what Mr. Aman has said?
Yes, sir. But I think we take a different approach to security.
Okay.
I think we insist on hardware level security. So I think bottom line is this, right? So for cellular systems, operators or the OEMs, they have been relying on the SIM or the subscriber ID model for a long time to store subscriptions and account information. It is good and bad because it's easily configurable and the stuff, but the catch is it's not remotely configurable. So we help address this through the concept of integrated SIM or iSIM, which is standardized within GSMA. The idea is all these credentials are stored within the processor itself. And in that sense, it becomes unique to the device, thereby making it safe. It's also configurable, right? And we have demonstrated this in a Vodafone network on a Samsung 5G device, the Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, using a Snapdragon 888 processor. And Thalys was the iSIM operating system which we did, right? So the concept has been demonstrated, ecosystem is already in place, but it need to go mainstream since the TSPs have ultimate control on the SIM and how it is used. It's going to take time, but I think that's going to be part of the future. So it'll have to be hardware, software, a mix of these things which we'll be using.
Yeah, and it is not only the hardware and software, it is basically regulation also, which is shortly going to come in place by way of mandating how the SIM personalization has to happen within the country. Thank you, Dr. Vinosh, and thank you, Aman, for this question. Yeah, Tejpal Singh, yes, you have been waiting patiently. Please go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon, panelists. Am I audible?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Tejpal.
So thank you for very much enriching discussions. I have just two quick questions. The privacy by design and security by design are novel terms which has been used in the software industry for last 10 years. So my question is why we have only adapted security by design and left the privacy by design concept and we are not talking about. Second question is security by design, how is there any benchmark? So or it has to be taken on the face value. So do you not think that we need to develop a framework to ensure that as a operator or as a user, when I am purchasing certain things, how to make sure that this device is complying the security by design principle? Otherwise, these terms are very good to talk in absence of any reference benchmarking.
Sharad, would you like to take this question? This is very near to your heart, I know. So please go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the chance. And thank you, Tejpal Singh sir, for asking the question. I think I will be very quick. Privacy by design should be taken at the same footing as security by design. But we are, I think, as you will know, as you can see, the ecosystem has to bite as much as it can chew. And I think the first chew is on security by design, because without security by design, you can't get to privacy by design. So I'm not making a comment on behalf of the whole panel here, but I'm just making a simple suggestion that you understand it like this, that it will have to be some steps. And privacy by design is very important too, but we'll come to that. You also know that the privacy laws are evolving in this country, and they are a bit out of hand right now from the point of view of the technical community. So it's going to be, it has to merge somewhere. And I think the other point that you made is my life's goal would be that logo is defined by Singh Saab in time to come, and that logo is put on devices and applications that meet the principle of security by design, so that users can see it. You see it very, very clearly, Tejpal Singh Saab. That is what is needed. So much to say, but I will stop here. Thank you.
I just want to make one point. There are security technology implementation guides for certain types of platforms. We don't have that in India. There is no India specific one. And I think it is time that the government, at least government usage of especially top level government officials, they need to have these files. These are basically configuration benchmarking files through which you can test for any kind of violation of security configurations and various other vulnerabilities and stuff. So I think that it's time that we do that. We should do that at least for government.
Thank you, Professor. I would like to inform all the participants. Yes, security is not, I'll say, some incident. It is basically a journey. We have started the journey, and whatever challenges are being faced, we'll be able to handle it. As far as the enforcement of regulation is concerned and the availability of those regulations is concerned, yes, we would be able to frame those regulations. We have started framing those regulations and we have started developing the enforcement mechanisms. And as I had indicated that it is basically the complete caravan which has to move together so that we are able to continue on this security journey successfully. With this, I would like to thank all the panel members for their excellent and varied contribution to cover the various aspects of the device security. So once again, a very good and very great opportunity being provided by NTI PRIT. We are thankful to NTI PRIT also for this. And with this, we conclude our panel discussion on the challenges in device security. Thank you all. Over to NTI PRIT.
Thank you, sir. And I would like thanks to PK Singh, sir, and all the panelists of track 2 for wonderful and very useful discussion. Now we will start track 3. That is.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. Yeah. The track 3 is security challenges in 5G deployment and applications. So this track will be moderated by Mr. S.K. Bhalla, DDG Telecom Security and Policy Research, NTI PRIT. Over to you, sir. And
thank you, Yashwant. Dear participants, we all had been participating and listening to the experts in 2 tracks where we talked about the network equipment security and then we moved on to the device security. And the last leg of today's panel discussion is very important for all of us, security challenges in 5G deployment and applications. And I have the privilege to welcome the expert panelists for today's last track, Mr. Shri Salil Mittal, AVP from Jio, Sanjeev Dhallam, Head Network Security, Bharti Airtel, and then we have Shri Radhakant Das, who is from Tata Consultancy Services, who deals with Head of Network Operations and Strategic Initiatives. And lastly, we have Shri Rajendra Kumar, who is Vice President, Control Data Centers. So we have very prominent experts from leading key operators in the country. We have an expert from cloud side, and we have an expert from application development side with also managed services experience, and also they have a lot of experience about operations of networks. So in this track, we'll be talking about the challenges in deployment and applications. So before I move further, again, once very heartiest welcome to all the 4 panelists. Thank you for joining this session. So we are running short of time. We are lagging by around half an hour. So I'll be requesting all the panelists so that we can cover more questions and be sharp in our replies. So let me start with our friend from Airtel. So the question is, there are 2 modes of deployments, non-standalone and other could be the full-fledged deployment. So in case of non-standalone deployments, which maybe I don't know which way the operators will go forward, but in case of non-standalone deployments, 5G will be inherently reliant on 4G core. So the downgrade attacks and the vulnerabilities of 4G will definitely be applicable to the 5G. So my question is then help us understand how operators would manage this challenge. Yes, Sanjeev ji. You can, Sanjeev ji, unmute yourself, please. Maybe Sanjeev, by the time you switch on, I think I can pose the same question to Salil also.
Hi. Yeah, am I audible? Balaji, am I audible?
Yes, Salil. Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
And thanks for inviting us. So the question is quite relevant, especially in case of the non-standard alone NSA architecture, wherein the dependencies on the 4G core node. And I think the downgrade attack is, just to give an example, is to the audience is that if somebody is using is latched onto 5G, and of course if 5G coverage is not there, so they will latch on to 4G. So that time, what kind of downgrade attacks are feasible? So as an example, for example, the unencrypted IMSI, has been one of the legacy issues, which we have seen in the all generations. And for example, if you are if we are onto a 4G or the lower generation or some kind of downgrade generation. So that IMSI catchers and fake base stations are there. However, there are controls which can handle them to a large extent. 5G has got lot of inbuilt features which in the first session we have covered quite in detail. I will not go there. Two keys and then the entire public key encryption that is there. So even if you get the a public key, it is very, or the private key, it's very tough to get the subscriber detail. But in case of the downgrade attacks, temporary identifiers like Booty or temporary IMSI can be implemented. And moreover, the important thing is once the IMSI is there, let's say IMSI gets compromised to get the subscriber information, right, or do any kind of further privacy breach, either you need to have access to the core, or you have, or the signaling from the signaling side one would come. So we can put controls out there, and there are appropriate monitoring and preventive controls by signaling firewalls or by implementing right kind of at the signaling points, the ACLs, so that you can prevent these ATI attacks and those kind of things. So what I'm trying to highlight is that yes, they are there, and by now so much of understanding has happened that we have appropriate preventive controls and monitoring controls so that we can minimize such kind of attacks. So the point is that the balance out will happen by appropriate technology controls along with the monitoring controls. So that's my take on such kind of attacks. Balaji, you're on mute.
Sorry. So monitoring and configuration issues will help us to mitigate those vulnerabilities to some extent. Yes. I appreciate that. So moving on to Mr. Rajendra Kumar. So you deal with the cloud, and 5G is going to rely heavily on cloud architecture. So ethereal clouds of software-defined digital routers, definitely they are going to pose a lot of challenges. So how to address such concerns, whether existing legal provisions cover such scenarios or self-regulation would suffice, given the fact that government has mandated empanelment of cloud providers only for government purposes. Yeah, please unmute, Rajendra, please unmute yourself.
Sorry,
Please.
When we talk about cloud services, so major of the portion of the data basically reside on the cloud. Okay, let me know application which is giving access through the 5G network to the data, but ultimately it's reside on the cloud. And when we will build a cloud, it is when we talk about government, it's always it's mighty cloud basically. Okay, so mighty cloud suffix some guidelines. Means government of India say that these are the guidelines in terms of the security which accordingly to you have to put in place. But beside that, there's a lot of security points which comes in the pictures. So when we talk about IT, so it's all about OSI layer or TCP/IP layers. Okay, so when we design let it be SD-WAN or Alkin software defined network or VFN or NVF and all those. So if we do segregation through the virtualizations layer, so there has to be a lot of security put in place through network access layer and also each layers basically. So when we talk about network, start from the DDoS security, where we can have a control of the kind of DDoS attack when the or network bandwidth is getting in or data is getting in at the cloud. Then we have the various layer like application layer where we control security at the at the application firewall. And third point is regarding the host network security within a the underlayer architectures. So we do it through host layer security or either it has to be done at the application layer firewall through where we control application. If suppose there is security vulnerabilities in the application, so that we can control it that is the application layer. Then we should have the provision to have the regular audit in terms of vulnerability assessment and penetration test for ongoing vulnerabilities to check, and then we can define. So if we talk about any legal procedures for anything, so there has to be some guidelines around. I have got a chance to work in various SOC security operation centers across various countries. So if you talk about IRAP in Australia, so they don't allow any other national to test their database. So that the cloud, which has to be providing such confidential services, let it be to governments or let it be to all kind of device or data which has to be reside in India. It has to be taken care by only Indian nationals, and the cloud has to be owned by the Indians organizations or either which are registered under Make in India programs. So that has to be there, and there has to be some guidelines around it from the government of India or who operate cloud data centers. So if I make it summary of it, that how this things has to be there. So there has to be various security enablement process at the various layer, starting from physical layer to the application network access layer and the and also the host layer. So giving that security on all those components, there is also security has to be enabled when the not for external user but also for internal user who are accessing these cloud servers through identity access management, because you maintain security at the highest layer in terms of the where data is getting in, but you don't maintain security where the user are getting into the cloud environment when who are designing this configuration on routers or SD-WAN networks or defining that a network access policy. But if you having some things boards on your laptop, somebody injected on your laptop, and you are managing the particular software defined networks, then it can inject a lot of things in place. So we should also have the security internally as well, so that we can block each and everything from the all perspective. Surinder sir, your voice.
Yeah, what I gather is that the efforts have to be from the cloud side owned by Indians run by Indians, and also some set of guidelines also you are suggesting.
Yes.
So let us hope that with the summarization of the recommendations which arise from this panel, government will take note of it and come out with something. So let me move on to TCS. Radha Kanji, you are a marriage service provider also, you develop a lot of applications also. So uh, in 5G security, we have talked about chip stage, we talked about equipment stage. So from application side, the software deployments, you can say, how to ensure security?
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, the panels. Thanks, NIT, for giving this opportunity. Definitely, there are a lot of things which can be done right from the chipsets to the software to the deployment of it. And fortunately, unlike the previous generations, 5G is actually giving us a unified security. And in the 4G, you had only one kind of security, you have EPSAK. Now, with 5G, you have three kinds of it. And of course, this enhances the security. The application layers, what I would say the 7 layers of security in analogous to the OSI layers. The application and sessions, they are supposed to be done like what to be presented to the next layer of the layer 7, or the coordination between layer 5 and layer 7 has to be always there in the design. So like in the previous sessions, we have been talking about security by design. So what we would say that security has to be by default. And it has to be there everywhere, right from hardware, software, and deployments as well. The configurations are very critical in the applications also, even though you have made your applications quite strong in terms of all kinds of security from identity to access to your the content. Again, so the previous just immediate one, Sarad was talking about privacy, the data privacy versus system privacy. So both of them can be handled as well. Uh, and I would say that yes, in the application side, the security is a very paramount importance. But while doing all this application security, somebody has to really consider the economic deployment of it. Since in the 5G, your volume of data is massive, your throughput is high, and your the number of devices are going big. The DPIs are limited. The processing, the computing power needed to understand that kind of higher layer informations are limited, and there has to be a trade-off on that.
Yeah, thank you, Radhakanji. You pointed out a very important thing about configurations.
Yeah.
So let me move on to Sanjeev ji. Sanjeev ji, 3GPP just provides about certain best practices guidelines, and configuration seems to be a very big factor in ensuring security. So when we talk about configuration management, then configuration management and capacity building of workforce, both would be very, very critical to ensure security dimensions of the services which are being delivered to the masses. So what are your views on this configuration management and capacity building of workforce?
So first of all, thank you, Bala sir, for inviting me in this particular discussion. My apologies, there was some glitch. Actually, I was not able to unmute. So to answer, there are a couple of questions. One is how we're going to build the capacities and how we're ensuring and how we need to ensure the configurations of the nodes are actually hardened to meet the security guidelines. So again, I'm going to spend some couple of minutes on the security by design principle. And what is the life cycle of this security by design principle? It starts from the inception, wherein the security requirements are to be well captured, reviewing the standards into the RFP requirements or the tender requirement toward the equipment supplier. So these requirements are then converted into the minimum baseline security requirements, which are called MBSS. Recently, DoT has released a paper on that also. These requirements are then well tested as part of new onboarding of the equipment. Equipments are hardened. This is around the new onboarding of the equipment. And during the life cycle, this configuration need to be reassessed again and again, along with the vulnerability posture, reviewing the zero-day vulnerabilities with the regular scanning of MBSS and the vulnerability assessment and the closure management. And this is how the security by design principle goes. So there is a big role of OEM to play in this in terms of complying to the standards, 3GPP standards, certifying their equipments, they are meeting to these particular standards, and then they are successfully demonstrating those capabilities and getting these capabilities converted into the hardening guidelines, hardening controls. So we are following the 360-degree approach as a rigid approach as part of any capacity buildup which is happening with, and most of the TSPs must be following this particular process. Primarily, if you talk about telecom infrastructure, there are controls around the authentication, encryption, and the temporary identity allocation procedure, which are one of the key parameters which need to be controlled as part of security buildup. And there are additional threats which are coming from the international connectivity, which are signaling connectivity, which are well protected by the signaling fibers, the diameter GTP or SS7. So this is how we actually approach in terms of getting the security 360-degree in place with the regular insurance of security. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Let me get quick bites from Salil also, because being one of the leading players in the country, how your company plans to manage these challenges?
So I think Sanjeev has very well covered, and so just to elaborate on this thing is that see telecom, if you see with 5G, I mean, if I may, 5G is all about software. We are coming out of the conventional, telco, which is a hard box equipment kind of a mindset, and so we are moving toward cloud native applications, which will be containerized, service-based architecture. So the entire, it's a paradigm shift. First of all, I mean, with 4G, everything became end-to-end IP in terms of communication, but with 5G, I think the entire thing has become software. Effectively, or with Open RAN, where we have distributed architecture, even the CU part, the controlized unit will also become a software-based, and even your networks are becoming soft switches, soft networks are coming up with SDN. So primarily, we are dealing with softwares, right? And the challenge here is that which and why telecom is very unconventional. And I'll just come to how we are dealing with it. That the threat landscape is very high, because we have subscriber side and multiple channels. Potential attack with edge computing. We are going very near to the customer, so the exposure is becoming exponentially high. The only way that we can mitigate this is by ensuring that the security principles or whenever we are inducting any element or any software with proper I mean the one-time security and the ongoing security. It has to be ingrained. I mean, it cannot be. Security is no more like a tick in the box. More than compliance, it has become and especially for our segment. So just to give you an example that so what I normally say is vulnerability management and the visibility, right, is very, very important, because you manage your vulnerabilities by ensuring hardening, by ensuring that application PTs are being done, AppSecs are happening, architectures are being deployed in the right way. Everything is part of that vulnerability management. But the important thing also is how much visibility you have on your network, because whatever we do, even the best technology companies in the world get hacked. And believe me, we all know as a security professional that and into the tech industry that these state actors are active, the kind of attacks that we are seeing. So how best we can visualize our network and the visibility of these kind of incidents are managed. I think if we have got the vulnerabilities managed, a proper visibility, we would be able to at least come to know what's happening in our network and take appropriate actions. And I think women technicalities, all of our panelists have already covered what we are doing.
Thank you, Salil. You are rightly pointed out, and Sanjeev also pointed out, it's a 360-degree approach, and it's a continuous journey. And higher the visibility, more will be the capability for the providers to manage that security. So that moves on to another new dimension. You all pointed out softwareization, and then we talked about also cloudification of in the 5G scenario. So when we talk about 5G network slicing, is a very important function which is going to help many enterprises. And in this case, using private clouds or public clouds or hybrid clouds, or we can say the shared resources, I'm sure they are going to pose a lot of challenges. Maybe if we go with shared resources, because the kind of Indian market, which is very cost sensitive, to cut down cost, if certain you can say configurations or applications are deployed through hybrid mode, then definitely these may be a big challenge for the operators and application providers. So how do you suggest that such a scenario could be managed? This question we can start with Rajender yourself, and then we can move on to all the panelists.
Okay, thank you. So when we talk about data, so it's I'm talking about starting from the governments. In government data, it's go in the three type of copies. One is restricted data, another is confidential data, and the third is like a more secret or secret data. So based on this, government came up with a three type of model, which is public cloud, government community cloud, and virtual private cloud. So when we talk about all these things, and you also said that's all kind of shared models. Okay. So and to give economical architectures or solution to the end customers. So we have to do that because that is the market demand in terms of to go pay per use model. But looking back to all the security advantage or disadvantage, so that is there. So first is like when we talk about secret data, master secret data. So my data has to be reside on the private cloud. Okay. When we say about non-restricted or confidential data, it can be on government community cloud or either it can be on public cloud. But when we do the slicing and all those for each delivery departments or every customers, so security has been plugged in terms of virtual security, the way virtual network is created through the various mechanism. And when there is a any attack is also there, so there will be it will partially impact to the particular department or particular application owner, basically, who has not done the proper security enablement for their secure applications, basically, or the database which is running. So my point is cloud CSP or DSP can give the infrastructures based on their demand. So I will tell you from the two perspective. One is from the CSP, another is from department or end customer perspective. So first is the CSP, like us. So we take all those parameters which to be there. It's like I said, at the various layers, security has to be enabled. But in addition to that, when we maintain secure data or confidential data, then or critical data, so there has to be a facility like encryption as a services. There has to be not only the encryptions layer has to be reside on OS or database, it has to be on the virtualization layer as well. Because if anybody get access to OS and you have the restrictions, or you have or anybody get into the application, you have the encryptions in place for database as well, but still he can do the harm for your virtualization layer, because you have done the slicing for your all those resources which will be there. So your management layer, which people generally leave, has to be also to be secured actually. So that we can have the security at the various layers, starting not only the monitoring, vulnerability assessment, and these are the ongoing things which has to be done in relation to hardening or OS hardening, or let it be application hardening or database hardening. But going forward, there has to be more security in place in terms of the virtualization when we do partitioning for the various customers. And secondly, your underlayer architecture has to be also more secured. Let me tell you. Now the hardware also comes on the network. You can boot the hardwares. So I've seen the issues where we got a threats or vulnerability issue on the BIOS level itself. So if your BIOS level is hacked, you have access to your data which is residing inside virtualization disk, basically within a underlayer OS. Secondly, I'm coming back to end customer perspective. So first, when he choose this kind of services, he has to decide what should be his application architecture in terms of the security planning. So just like we're talking about 5G users, or application which will be will be accessed through the 5G network. So do we have enough provision of the data which is going to be from device to the cloud or back to the from reverse way, that how the thing has to be there, just like on which protocol it is working or how the encryption has been enabled and which kind of encryption has to be designed so that it cannot be hacked. I've worked in defense, so I've seen these kind of cipher systems where we transmitted having a transmission over the network or defense network only, so that it cannot be hacked. So likewise, when we talk about government data, it's very secure. It has to be very secure. So we should have the provision, and we should ask the CSP or DSP to provide guidelines or to implement such kind of security so that it cannot be hacked. I come across many CSP where they provide the services as per the provisioning to Government of India, but we don't know. They are knock and soak maybe outside. We don't know who is managing, who is accessing. So we should have some regulation around it so that not only the logical security, physical security or access security also to be managed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajendra ji. Let me take comments from Sanjeev also. Sanjeev, what's your take on this?
Sir, if we actually review the 5G use cases, 5G use cases pyramid, it actually fits in the mobile broadband, enhanced mobile broadband, and then the ultra reliable low latency communication, and the third side is actually massive machine communication. So there are different use cases in the 5G, and primarily if we review the two cases apart from mobile broadband, these are primarily enterprise use cases. And these enterprise use cases require different set of network requirements as well as the security requirements. For example, if there is a massive machine communication energy meters, they may not require as high as security as like a tele operations or like a remote operations kind of healthcare kind of applications. So there is a vanilla kind of security provision across the 5G network, which talks about the network access security, network domain security, and then the most critical part is actually the application security. That actually gets provision in terms of requirements of the respective slices. If the healthcare slice, then the network security requirements will be high in nature, very high in nature. So now if we translate this very high in nature security requirements into the vanilla security requirements, prima facie, I can actually categorize into two broad categories. One is the additional layer of encryptions of the traffic, which is going from the customer, enterprise customer. And second is the additional layer of monitoring, inline monitoring and defense mechanism in terms of firewall. So like if we take the case of IoT security normally traditionally IoT devices doesn't have a security capability of installing a security agent on top of that. So then comes the network based malware detection and control for the IoT security piece, wherein you need to put a firewall, you monitor all the user plane traffic going from the IoT devices. Is there any malicious communication happening to the IOCs? And at a network layer, you can protect. So this has to be provisioned on the need basis. Second is, if there is a defense application wherein they need end-to-end encryption of the traffic, you need to put the security gateways for protection, encryption of the traffic as an additional layer of security. So my undertake is that these additional security layer use cases fits into these primarily two categories in terms of better encryption, in terms of better monitoring and defense controls, as far as we provision the extra layer of security for respective slices. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Salil, what's your take on this shared resources and security perspective?
Yeah, so I think that if I had to say, network slicing is the key differentiator for 5G, and I think what Sanjeev and Ajamji was just trying to highlight, and the reason being till 4G, I would say in a very simple language, telcos were like dumb pipes. There's a and normally we call them carriers, right? We are just carrying, we are pipe, right? But here, as per the need of the customer, we can customize what is the requirement you have, security requirement, resource requirement, what kind of throughput you need. So network slicing is what is quite a differentiating factor, and definitely. And as far as resource sharing goes, right from virtualization to cloud to containers, everything is the inherent philosophy is sharing, right? Optimization. So we don't have to worry about that. The right thing is the more resource sharing is happening, it brings optimization, efficiency, and so on and so forth. A lot of benefits comes along with it. And these sharing technologies are always for the betterment of tech, right? Technology. The only thing is how to balance out security, right? What kind of threats that will have. And I think in the first session, Professor, I forgot the name. I mean, he was talking about network slicing theft, right? Network slicing intrusion, right? So we need to put controls over there again. Be it configuration controls. There might be possible DOS attacks. We have to do hard limiting of network physical resources, how much one can consume, right? Apart from the logical resource consumptions. API communications will happen. We'll have to put API gateways, API security, and I think in one of the session, API security was very, very well covered. Similarly, for DOS prevention, we'll have to put controls, load balancers. So I think if we architect it well and ensure that security controls are in place vis-a-vis what threats we have, network slicing will definitely be, at least for the communication industry, it will be one of the key factors for the growth. That's my take on it.
Yeah, thank you, Salil. Radhakanji, quick bite from your side, and then
Yes,
we'll
you.
try to conclude the session.
Thank you. So in the network slice, first of all, with NSA mode, we will not have slices. With SM mode, we'll have slices, so little far, it's good. But in the current mode also, in the network, in terms of network sharing, MVNOs do exist, securities do exist. So what our purview is, the operators need to make sure that the business policies and all are completely aligned with implementation of technology. Just the 3GPP tells a lot of things. Some are mandatory, some are optional. But a mindful use, a thorough understanding of how the security has to be implemented, regular upgrades on the technologies, security implementation. Again, as I said, you have to have some percentages of authentication on every session. If you do it 100%, again, the economics will go in a different direction. Then the other thing is that the fudge testing. Fudge testing in the sense, some targeted messages or the different layers, on the chip layer, the protocol layers, and also on the system layers. Regularly do this testing and find out the vulnerability and penetration testing, and make sure that the shared services or the slicing when it comes up and they have been handed out. Again, having AIML, it works out quite well in maintaining the security in a complex sliced networks. But again, the learning can be in a reverse way as well. So those need to be controlled. There are also instances where AML has been reversely used to learn it in a wrong way, and it started creating damages. So that's all from my side in a quick one.
Thank you, Radhakanji. I think discussing with the experts gives me a feeling that deployment may not pose that many challenges because we are all well geared up to manage, whether it is through management layer or through well defining sensitivity of the applications, or going with the red team and blue team. You talked about testing of fudge testing, etc. So many things. So keeping in view the time constraints, last question, 1 minute reply from all of you. The question is very straightforward. All the operators which you have pointed out, service providers, whether it is cloud or application provider or a TSP, you all have given very sound confidence about the security controls which will be deployed by all of you. Now, the 5G users may also be expected to exercise certain best practices. So just 1 minute each, what is your message to the new generation users from security perspective? So I can start with Salil.
I think it's a very relevant question, and probably and this is personally very close to me, because the cyber, the space that we are creating you see what is happening, now very human-centric and targeted attacks are happening. One can now can go to a dark web and avail a service like malware as a service or a crime as a cyber crime as a service. So that has becoming so easy, and I need not tell you how the numbers are increasing. The important thing is it's not only targeting, impacting humans, but it is impacting societies, right? It is impacting countries, nations, and it is also entering into our cognitive space. Our likes, dislikes, everything gets impacted. Now, the important thing is, as we enter in the era of 5G and onwards, and especially in the world of metaverse, and where everything is connected, everything is anything is connected. So there is a close relationship between cyber and physical. So security has to become like a by default, a default behavior in all of this. That's one thing. I mean, all of us when we go on the road, we always look on our left and right. So that's how that's how we cross the road. So that's the behavioral change that is required. And I would just say two things when it comes to. There can be a number of checks and balances. I think it's be aware of your actions. The user has to be aware of their actions. It's like you do wrong things, you get wrong results, right? So, download what you're downloading, what you're clicking, installation, what you're installing, keeping strong passwords. So it's like, law of karma. If you do wrong things will happen. If you do right things, so this security is all about discipline. So I think we have to learn a cyber discipline in our lives, in our personal lives, in our professional lives, and we have to start teaching our kids because they are being targeted. So right from, it's not, it is irrespective of age. So, be aware of actions. And the second thing I say, learn from your actions. So if something will happen wrong to us, right? So we have to learn from those actions. So that's it for all my users. We have to be a cyber aware society. And as a country, we are, we because of the education, because of language constraints and all that, we have a huge challenge to face. And together as a fraternity, we have to come up and give helping hands. So we have to work together on that.
Thank you, Salil. You talked about behavior and cyber aware society. Sanjeev, what's your take on this?
Just on the same, that like Salil is highlighting, the user awareness is one of the key parameter, and the control of action by the users. They has to be very, very cautious. Whatever they are downloading on their handsets, what actions they are doing, what kind of malicious website they are going, and then that lead to download a malicious payload onto their handset, which can actually leak out critical information out of them. The device protection is one of the key. You has to take care of your device in terms of protection with your keywords or face sensors, etc. If you don't actually protect your device, that's the user actions which are required. He has to be very, very conscious what actions he is doing, and that actually can result into what kind of complication. Typical phishing attacks wherein somebody is calling you and asking you your card will be blocked and please share your OTPs, etc. That's one of the things which wherein very, very mature user, very, very educated users has been trapped because of unawareness. So these kind of awareness we need to create in the market towards the user segment, and the user also has to be overcautious in terms of taking action because in this digital connected world, that is one of the key messages from my side.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Let me hear from Rajendra also.
Yeah. So Salilji and Sanjeevji already highlighted, but I will add more thing to it. Since 5G network will be coming, so there will be a lot of scope for the 5G users on the application front. So it's not only the custom way what we are doing, we will be doing when 5G will be coming. We'll be doing more thing actually. Okay. So once the 5G comes, highest network in terms of speed till 1 Gbps, if we feel. So use of the application will be in different way. Like we would like to bring, car on the network, vehicle on the internet. I want to see that how my car is driving. And I want to see that how traffic control is done through the CCTV. I am running my machine learning algorithm or artificial intelligence application on it to see how the user behavior pattern is there in terms of who's parking wrong way, this way and that way. And there will be some huge case in terms of where I want to open the door of my home for sitting at the office for other people. who can come in my house, or maybe I want to operate my TV sitting at my office, or maybe I want to operate my fridge, switch on, switch off, sitting at somewhere else. So once we come with this kind of use case through IoT or machine learning or artificial intelligence, a lot of things. So hackers are smart. Okay, once we have these all things over the network, they will reach to your homes. They will reach to your all CCTV operations. If I hack your CCTV, suppose I'm monitoring the big project out of one city, or let me know any match or stadium, I can do anything out of it. So there has to be more secure way, and the application owners, the users has to be trained on that. Just like Government of India also issue a lot of guidelines, but people ignore, and they should be trained, or they should be just like in organization also we guide our employee that how they have to behave as per the cyber security ISMS guidelines. The same way they also has to be some mechanism so that they can be aware when anybody host application or use case to them. This should also be taught or told what is the security guidelines or instruction has to be there, so that they can maintain required decorum in place. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rajendra. Radhakanji, quick bite from your side.
Yeah, I have something little different than what a typical 5G users has to be take care of. The first thing is that it is getting faster. All this 5G behavioral changes, improvements we know, and that actually makes these hackers more powerful. They'll hack your device. They will actually snatch your data more faster. They'll intrude it faster. They'll react faster. So people should be aware of it. And what it means is buy the equipments from responsible ODMs. Make sure that in the cost, in the words of saving a few rupees or few money, don't get into the trap of cheaper devices, which in turn would be doing something else. So that's one cautious warning I could see globally it is happening. The second is that we have seen in US, we have seen in other countries, the initial stages of 5G deployment will be pocket-wise deployments. They will not be continuous coverages. If anybody is concerned about his battery, they might need to switch on the 5G when it is needed, not always. So that is something a typical learning what we have seen as a 5G users in our devices. So these are two quick ones. And again, on the security perspective, yes, it is valid for all, but the things are getting riskier with the 5G. So while operators and OEMs doing their job, I think as a user, they need to have all the responsibilities. And again, the issue comes in the people who have limited knowledge in terms of using devices. So they have now bigger power, which can be utilized in other ways. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Radhakanji. It was nice interacting with all of you. Whatever time was available, we could cover some of the key aspects pertaining to 5G deployments and applications. So thank you very much for sharing your ideas and rich experience in this panel discussion. So on behalf of NTI also, I extend thank to all of you. Over to Vishal.
Thanks a lot, sir. With this, I propose thanks to all the participants and the audience who have participated throughout this 3-hour session on Roundtable related to 5G security issues and security testing. I am highly thankful to Shri K. Rajaramanji, Secretary Telecom, who took out time from their busy schedule and enriched us and motivated us for this roundtable conference. And in future also they have given us insights that how to move forward. Secondly, I'm highly thankful to DG and Head NTI Shri UK Srivastava. Under their able guidance, we were able to conduct this program, and they are highly motivating us in conducting such programs. Further, I thank all the moderators for all the 3 tracks, Shri R.R. Mittaji, Shri P.K. Singh ji and Shri S.K. Balaji for deliberating all the aspects, discussing all the issues with the OEMs throughout their all the sessions, from challenges to equipment securities to the security testing aspects. And finally, I thank all the panelists from various OEMs, academia, that have taken out time from their busy schedules for this roundtable and given their quiet insights that what is the way forward in the coming generation of 5G. And finally, the audience who have been so attentive in listening this roundtable for last 3 hours. I'm highly thankful to them. With this, signing off. See you soon on further programs also. Thanks a lot. Jai Hind.
Thank you.